Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. Thanks as always for joining us this week. As you can see, I'm at an undisclosed location, although this might give you a hint as to where I might be. Beautiful city in somewhere in the South, and a lot going on up in Washington, D.C., back home. The Biden crisis continues. We have a special report on that. Plus a new update on federal court proceedings over whether we count ballots after Election Day, or even worse, ballots that arrive after Election Day. I'll give you an update there. We've got some new numbers on foreign nationals who are registered to vote in D.C. elections. I've got the details on that. Plus, we've sued the Treasury Department. I know there's been a lot of concern about Chinese and other foreign entities buying up farmland. I've got a report on a Judicial Watch lawsuit that tried to get to the heart of that. And we've got also an important new lawsuit on January 6th. First up, though, is the crisis related to Joe Biden's cognitive decline. He remains in office. He continues to run for the presidency. He's still the candidate for the Democrats, the putative candidate. Now, as I said last week, I had heard that he was going to resign this past Monday, and obviously that hasn't taken place. But the writing is on the wall about his campaign ending. I don't know when it's going to happen now. I think it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when. And again, I don't see how he's able to pull back from his campaign if indeed that is the end result and remain as president. I think that's probably one of the delays. He had the NATO summit up in Washington, D.C. this week. The city was shut down in large measure as all these leaders visited. And it was an opportunity again for Biden to try to rehabilitate himself, which I think is ridiculous. The idea that after this debate, anyone's going to be convinced he's able to muddle that because he's able to muddle through a press conference or two, he's fit to be president or a candidate from the political perspective is just ridiculous. And sure enough, he failed, and everything he's doing is reconfirming and reaffirming, at least for Democrats, it looks like, the necessity that he leave the campaign from the Patriot perspective, from Judicial Watch's perspective, the necessity that he frankly leave the Oval Office and resign. And this little segment here is a remarkable illustration, or a dramatic illustration, or a useful illustration, or how about Exhibit A in Biden's failing cognitive state from his press conference after the summit just the other day.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
So, I mean, as you can see there, and then later he said, "Oh, I met President Putin." Come on, Zelensky was standing right next to him. And then later in the press conference, he's asked about Vice President Harris, and he immediately says, "Well, when I appointed Vice President Trump." So there's been nothing that has reassured the powers that be in the Democratic Party that he's fit for office. Now, George Clooney, I guess, now agrees with me. You may recall this video that I played a few weeks ago at a fundraiser that depicted him at a fundraiser, essentially being dragged off the stage by Obama because it looked like Biden didn't know where he was or what he was doing. And let's just run that video again.
Well, here we are, another Biden moment. Freezes. Obama, they're at a fundraiser in Los Angeles, by the way. Obama grabs his arm, escorts him off the stage, pushes him off the stage, really, right? Further disturbing evidence of Biden's cognitive decline raises questions about his fitness for office, let alone running for election. I'm worried, he's not fit to serve another day. Watch it again. There you go. Freezing. Obama grabs his arm. What must our friends think? What must our enemies think at America's weakened state as a result of Biden's cognitive issues? Share your thoughts below.
So George Clooney, the Democrat activist, big fundraiser, was at that fundraising event a few weeks ago, and now 3 weeks later, he publishes something in the New York Times, as many people noted, obviously at the behest of Barack Obama. I think it's fair to analyze it that way. That Biden isn't fit to run. So he's being abandoned by all sorts. Now, the crisis that's resulted isn't just a political one, and it's a significant one, because if we have a political crisis in terms of who should be the president, I mean, usually that sort of issue is settled, who the candidates are going to be. We're just a few months away from the election. But we've got the crisis of his being in the Oval Office and not competent to make decisions as president of the United States. I think that's the crisis. I think that's why there needs to be the 25th Amendment option. We've had information that, as we've talked about previously, Hunter Biden is, according to reports, the gatekeeper, is the chief of staff for Biden. I mean, who's making the decisions in the White House? The corrupted Hunter Biden? Jill Biden? No one voted for any of those people. And his doctor, supposedly, who is a buddy of his family's, who was involved in the Biden business operations, hasn't given him the necessary neurological exams that would give a hint, at least, about his cognition. And he has been meeting with a Parkinson's specialist, we now find out. So there's a real crisis of confidence in the president of the United States, and that's a dangerous situation to be in. And so to me, and I understand the unlikely political possibility of this happening, but that's not my job in many ways. I'm kind of, at Judicial Watch, we try to point out what should be done under law in terms of what is good policy to protect the Constitution. Vice President Harris and the majority of the cabinet, as the 25th Amendment requires, are able to remove Biden from the presidency. And they can do that by notifying Congress that there's a disability. And again, if Biden objects, he can object within 4 days, and then it's up to a 2/3 majority vote in both houses of Congress to find him in a disability and place Vice President Harris in his stead as acting president of the United States. Now, Biden may accede to the finding and not fight it, and it may not require a congressional vote. But that's what should happen. I mean, because right now it's just a political fight about who should be the candidate at the head of the Democratic ticket. It's interesting, it's important, and it's not interesting and important because of just partisan interest. It's just important because of, as I said, this is how we select the next president. And there's discord in how that's being done right now. But there's a constitutional issue, there's a governance issue related to his obvious cognitive issue. And the interesting thing is, I don't think I've mentioned this before. I think I tweeted it out. So if Vice President Harris becomes president because Biden resigns, which is a possibility, an increasing one. I don't know if you saw the news today, but Democratic donors are now withholding $90 million, according to the New York Times. Fox News is saying there's going to be a flood of Democrats who are going to be calling him on him to at least leave the campaign in the next few days. So the deluge could be coming. I don't know. And of course, they continue to carpet bomb the White House with negative stories about Biden. But if Harris becomes president because Biden resigns, she gets to pick the vice president. But that vice presidential choice has to be approved by a majority in both houses in Congress. So the House has to approve it, the Senate has to approve it. And so what's the consequence of that constitutional provision? It means that House Republicans who control the Congress, at least the House, can insist upon a Republican being vice president. I half jokingly say this is how President Trump could become vice president to President Harris. So put that in your pipe and smoke it as to how this might play out. It's kind of interesting to kind of go through that analysis. Now, the only thing in many ways that has, I wouldn't say it's the only thing, but a significant benefit to keep Biden at least in office another 6 days, because to me it's a day by day thing, is the radical left has decided that you can't remove Biden for whatever reason, for their political perspective. They think having him as a puppet evidently is better than having someone who is able to say no or has their own brain that they can exercise in terms of rational judgment. And we saw this the other day with AOC, the infamous Marxist Communist congresswoman from New York, made a statement, and I played it on Instagram. Here it is.
Has spoken to the president over the weekend. I have spoken with him extensively. He made clear then, and he has made clear since, that he is in this race. The matter is closed. He had reiterated that this morning. He has reiterated that to the public. Joe Biden is our nominee. He is not leaving this race. He is in this race, and I support him. Now, what I think is critically important right now is that we focus on what it takes to win in November, because he is running against Donald Trump, who is a man with 34 felony convictions that has committed 34 felony crimes, and not a single Republican has asked for Donald Trump to not be the nominee. I'm here to win on this democracy. I'm here to win in November.
And so, I mean, you can see the politics is now, it's Hunter and the extremists in the Democratic Party want to keep Biden in place. Everyone else wants him to leave in the Democratic establishment. Republicans probably are, they probably run hot and cold on it. They probably prefer to run against Biden because he's so compromised. On the other hand, there are many Americans who both are Republican and Democrat who are concerned about his competency and that he can't be president, let alone a candidate. So that's where we are. So how it's going to play out, I thought he was, I heard he was going to be gone by last week or earlier this week. We'll see what happens next. But as I said, I'm guessing, it's a guess. It's not a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. It's a matter of when Biden, either or both, steps down as candidate for president and actually steps down as president. So AOC did something nasty this week, unsurprisingly, given her politics. And she sought the impeachment of Justices Alito and Justices Thomas. So here's her tweet. Today, I introduced articles of impeachment against Supreme Court Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. And of course, she's making these false allegations that they committed some wrongdoing through accepting gifts that they're allowed to accept under the ethics rules and the law, and falsely implying they were accepting gifts that required their recusal. And there's no evidence that any of that took place. And so she's not even right on the appearance issue, let alone the explicit law ethics provisions that apply to the conduct of Supreme Court justices. And of course, with Supreme Court justices, and she's probably right in the sense that the only way to police them ultimately is through the impeachment mechanism. But impeachment doesn't work here because there's no underlying violation of law or ethics or anything else requiring impeachment. It's just an intimidatory action by a radical leftist to target and abuse the Supreme Court. And this is how I responded. I retweeted her. And I said, communists like AOC hate an independent judiciary and therefore want to destroy the Supreme Court. So this is a partisan extremist plan to undo the Supreme Court. It's core to the functioning of our constitutional republic to have three branches of government, independent, separate from each other. Obviously, it doesn't mean they're unchecked, but the check that's in place for the court doesn't apply here because there's no misconduct at issue. They're trying to punish Justice Thomas in part because of his race. They don't like the fact he's a Black conservative. Targeting Justice Alito and his spouse as well. Of course, Justice Thomas's wife, Ginny Thomas, my friend. Just completely outrageous, just trying to destroy their families with fake allegations of misconduct, just like what they're doing to all their other political opponents. In fact, not only are they trying to impeach her or them through this sham impeachment effort, this abusive impeachment request by AOC, but Sheldon Whitehouse, who has ethics problems of his own, Judicial Watch filed a complaint about him. Essentially, it looks like putting his thumb on the scales to help his wife's interests and clients. He's demanded a criminal investigation of Justice Thomas by the corrupted, conflicted, compromised Justice Department run by the Biden gang. Now, typically that would be laughed out of the Justice Department, but with this Justice Department, who knows? Really outrageous abuse by both Senator Whitehouse and AOC. Now, typically, AOC ignores these types of tweets I put out or others put out against her, but this one must have stung because she responded to my tweet. So this is what she said, and it was a non-responsive, smart aleck comment, kind of a tweet. That's fine. Maintaining an independent judiciary means impeaching corrupt justices, AOC responded to me, when they take millions of dollars in, quote, gifts, unquote, from people with business before the court. As I said, that's factually inaccurate. They weren't, quote, gifts, unquote. They were gifts allowed for under the rules that left-wing justices similarly have taken from their friends. Hope this helps, she writes. You can find Schoolhouse Rock on YouTube. And those of you who don't remember Schoolhouse Rock, it was a cartoon that was run during the 70s that provided little history lessons to young people on Saturday mornings. And let me run this so AOC understands what our Constitution says as sung well by Schoolhouse Rock.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty. To ourselves and our posterity do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
So I find it very interesting that AOC is worried about ethics of Supreme Court justices. As I recall, she's facing an ethics investigation, isn't she? Over gifts, expensive tickets she receives to attend this big Met ball that happens every year, which is basically a big fundraiser for the Met up in New York, where the Hollywood stars and everyone who wants to be seen come dressed up. And you may recall she wore some odd get up with a political statement at the event, and in order to get that the ability to attend the event, she received a valuable ticket that she arguably isn't able to receive under the law. So here it is, the pot calling a kettle black on ethics issues by AOC. And to be clear, AOC is a radical extremist who wants to, who is now abusing her powers as a House member to try to intimidate the court with this sham impeachment effort that is not in retaliation, not as based on any good faith concern about ethics, but purely based, on my opinion, based on a bad faith effort to retaliate against justices who rule the wrong way, and even worse, are persuasive in how they rule. Of course, Justice Thomas is a particular threat to the left because he's a Black conservative and undermines their whole narrative about how minorities can only be represented by commies, right? And Justice Alito wrote the decision overturning Roe versus Wade, so they really hate him. And they're abusing him because his wife had flags that are perfectly appropriate. It's just, I don't even want to explain what their argument is, because to explain it is to even give it more life than it deserves. So AOC is attacking me because I'm calling out her abuse of government as a government official. So good. Bring it on, right? We'll keep on battling, and we're not going to be intimidated by this powerful congressman into being quiet about her abuse of office. And it is abuse of office. And by the way, what you should do is let AOC know what you think about her efforts to impeach and abuse Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. You can call the Capitol Hill switchboard at 202-225-3121. That's 202-225-3121. Ask for her office. And I would encourage you to communicate how you feel about it respectfully. Just remember, it's just a regular staff person who's answering the call, and just say, what you think about it. And while you're doing it, talk to your other members of Congress, in the House especially, and let them know what you think about this effort. And you should expect them to stand up against this issue. That's what at least I would say. So there you have it. Defend Judicial Watch, right? And defend the rule of law, defend the Constitution. Okay, so we had a lot going on this week. Always picked the wrong week to travel, but what's great about Judicial Watch is it's a team effort, right? And I'm honored to be able to talk each week about the fine work our investigators and lawyers do to, as I note, to protect the Constitution, educate Americans about what their government's up to. And we had a big lawsuit filed in Mississippi, one of two lawsuits on the issue, over whether states can legally count ballots that arrive after Election Day. I think there are 19 states, either 9 or 19. Now I hope I'm not misremembering, but there are several states that allow the counting ballots that arrive after Election Day, which is a clear-cut violation of federal law. And we've sued in 2 of those states. Illinois, they count ballots that arrive for up to 14 days past Election Day, including ballots that don't have a postmark. Now, that case we filed on behalf of a Congressman Boss, running for Congress, running for office. And the court strangely said a candidate doesn't have standing to challenge this type of illegality in court, meaning that, he's not being harmed, which we don't agree with. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. You're probably not a lawyer if you're listening to this. Does that make sense to you that a candidate doesn't have standing to challenge an election law that's in violation of federal law? Of course they do. We also have another lawsuit in Mississippi we filed. They count votes up to 5 days after Election Day. And we represent the Libertarian Party in that case. And the court in that case, the lower district court, the federal court, had a hearing this week on our case. And, this is what we describe in our lawsuit about, what the issues are. And then it's a civil rights lawsuit, by the way. These are civil rights lawsuits to vindicate the rule of law. And this is the quote from our lawsuit. Under federal law, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every even-numbered year is Election Day. election for federal elections. Congress recently reaffirmed a single national election day when it enacted the Electoral Count Reform Act. Under the recent congressional amendments, no extension of election day shall be allowed unless there are force majeure events that are extraordinary and catastrophic that justify extension. Despite Congress's unambiguous and long-standing statement regarding a single and uniform national election day, Mississippi extended election day by allowing 5 additional business days after election day for receipt of absentee ballots. No force majeure events that are extraordinary and catastrophic currently exist in Mississippi to justify extending the deadline for the November 5th, 2024 federal election for presidential and vice presidential elections. Counting untimely, illegal, and invalid votes, such as those received in violation of federal law, substantially increases the pool of total votes cast and dilutes the weight of votes cast by plaintiffs' members of our client's party, and others in support of the plaintiff's federal nominees. So these are illicit votes that essentially cancel out and dilute legal votes. 1.7% of the votes cast in Mississippi were received after Election Day. I don't need to tell you, that's enough to swing an election one way or the other. The law requires an election day, not an election week. Mississippi's 5-day extension of Election Day beyond the date set by Congress is illegal, violates the constitutional rights of voters, and obviously encourages fraud, and generally undermines confidence in the outcome of elections because it just necessarily invites fraud. Because on election day, you know who's leading more or less, and it's a number that can be is going to be tempting to find in votes that come in after election day. It's besides being illegal, it's just an awful policy. And this is the sort of heavy lifting that Judicial Watch does. Now the court, because we're cleaning up the voter rolls, we defend voter ID, and we're trying to stop this effort to decimate the rule of law on elections and turn them into something that is so compromised that people don't have confidence. And that could be the end of our republic. If people completely blow off elections in terms of believing the outcome one way or the other, that'd be terrible. And so we're trying to restore confidence in our elections by ensuring they're run fairly and cleanly as reasonably as possible. So the court had the hearing, obviously understood the issues involved. He's probably going to rule initially or rule one way or the other within a month or two. So pray for wisdom and discernment by the judge, and I'll keep you updated as events warrant. I mean, and to me, you know, irrespective of how this court rules, I mean, the left really just wants to eliminate elections, practically speaking. I mean, they want the elections to begin, you know, weeks before election day, and then weeks after election day. I mean, we don't need an election season. There's no way on earth that any sensible government or nation would allow elections to occur over the course of weeks. I mean, that's not an election. That's like a rolling survey. We need to get back to election day. We really do. And speaking of which, we need to ensure that only citizens are voting in our elections. There's a federal fight in Congress now, a little too late for my taste, but still it's important to have it, about whether federal law is going to be changed to require certification and proof of citizenship to vote. Right now, it's illegal to vote in federal elections if you're a non-citizen. But there's no policing of that, practically speaking, other than the honor system, where someone says, I'm a citizen, and they register to vote. And so the honor system is no one ask you to verify it. So you could check you're a citizen and you're still a non-citizen, and no one's even allowed to ask the question whether you're a citizen or non-citizen. They just have to accept what you write at face value. So obviously that needs to change. But in the meantime, you've had extremist left jurisdictions allow non-citizens to, again, dilute the vote of real citizens by voting in local elections, including in our nation's capital. As I've jokingly, not even a joke, I mean, it could be the Russian ambassador or the entire staff of the Chinese embassy, foreign nationals, whoever they are, could all vote for DC mayor of our nation's capital. I mean, that's insanity. And so they passed that statute here in DC to allow non-citizens to vote, both legal and illegal non-citizens. They can even be election workers, according to the documents we just uncovered. Congress tried to overturn it, but it was derailed by Democrats in Congress who evidently want to make it easier for non-citizens to illegally vote in elections generally. And they want generally non-citizens in principle to vote in all elections. That's why they're pushing it at the local level. And so we asked the DC Board of Elections for details on how many non-citizens had registered in this first election in which they'd be able to vote. And we found that as of June of this year, according to the voter registration data we recovered, 583 foreign nationals are registered to vote in Washington, D.C. 583. Now, the number of total voters is 457,000. Of those, citizens are 456,000. And the difference is, as I say, more or less 583. So there you have it. That's the list of non-citizens who are, in my view, legally, because they are doing it pursuant to law, essentially negating the votes of citizens in our nation's capital. What an abomination. And we also got documents that show that non-citizens are eligible to vote, to run elections in Washington, D.C. I think that's problematic as well. I mean, D.C. lets people who are in jail vote, which is an odd thing to be doing. And of course, they don't have voter ID. So it's just like lack of security on top of lack of security. And the fact that as I say, over 500 foreign nationals can vote in local elections in Washington, D.C. is a national scandal. And it's an insult, frankly, to every American citizen. And Congress can and must stop this attack on the voting rights of citizens. And so Congress has special purview over the District of Columbia. There's not a thing that falls from the sky in D.C., constitutionally speaking, that isn't done under the sufferance of Congress. And so they need to get their act together and stop this. There could be some legal challenges to this in the long run as well. But again, it's Judicial Watch again, pushing to expose what's going on with the attack on your right to vote as a United States citizen. And it's more importantly, an attack on you as a citizen per se. Now, you may recall that we've sued Congress, or more directly, the U.S. Capitol Police, for January 6 videos and emails. And in response to our pressure, the House is largely released or is in the process of releasing most of those videos, although they're still hiding emails. Now, the DC police had many officers present on January 6th, including undercover officers, it looks like. And so we've sued for the body cam videos of the officers there on January 6th. It's now been 3.5 years, and we still don't have the videos? Unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. So we filed the lawsuit against the DC government for all body cam footage captured by the Metropolitan Police Department, including Officer Michael Fanone, Fanone, who's kind of been out there attacking Trump over January 6th. But he testified he had the reason we're interested in his footage, because he said he had footage showing the attack. And so, well, let's see the footage. I mean, it's really simple. I mean, you can't say January 6th is the worst thing to happen in American history and then deprive American citizens of basic information depicting what happened. Unless, of course, you've got a political reason for hiding it. So the DC police rejected our request because they said the videos are part of an ongoing investigation and criminal proceeding. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, their idea of when a crime should stop being prosecuted for January 6th is never. So we'll never see them under that rule. And previously, the fact there are ongoing criminal proceedings has never really been a reason to withhold body cam videos of disturbances like this. It's bunk. And their release would result in the invasion of privacy. Whose privacy? People are out in public. And we responded, the records in question are of great public interest, which outweighs any asserted privacy interests. Furthermore, the assertion of an ongoing criminal investigation does not preclude the release of requested videos, as I noted, as police body-worn camera videos routinely released pending the conclusion of law enforcement proceedings. In May of 2021, CNN claimed to have received exclusive footage of DC Metropolitan Police Officer Fernone being assaulted while defending the U.S. Capitol during the protests on January 6th. And he gave testimony that said, my body cam captured the violence of the crowd directed towards me during those very frightening moments. It's important part of the record for this committee's investigation and for the country's understanding of how I was assaulted and nearly killed as the mob attacked the Capitol that day. And I hope everyone will be able to watch it. I do too. And every other piece of video that he and his colleagues have. And now he's a contributor for CNN, that police officer. And he's been noted as an anti-Trump activist, which is fine. He can do whatever he wants under the First Amendment. But we want the videos. The American people deserve the full picture from the incident at the Capitol on January 6th. What are they hiding? The DC Metropolitan Police Department should be just transparent and release the videos. Come on. So we filed it just the other day. We'll see what happens, and I'll keep you updated, again, as events warrant. Another issue that I know the grassroots are concerned about is the purchase of land around bases and farmland generally by the Chinese and other foreign interests. And it's been an issue that Democrats and Republicans have been concerned about. And I get very nervous about this whole situation with China, because when I see both Republicans and Democrats on the same page about a national security threat, it tends to make me think that there's something terrible about to happen. And for instance, the Biden administration just announced the other day that the committee that we sued, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, we just sued that committee of the Treasury Department for records about communications about these foreign land purchases. They just expanded their jurisdiction over military bases throughout the nation to make sure that foreigners aren't purchasing national security sensitive lands. And so the Biden administration, you rarely hear me say this, is right on the money in terms of focusing their analysis and their monitoring of the situation. But in the meantime, the American people deserve to know everything else that's been going on with these purchases, or as much as they can under the law. And it's disturbing, and I don't understand the reason for it, that the Treasury Department is withholding information about these foreign land purchases. On January 19th, 2024, just earlier this year, the GAO, which is a main government watchdog, released a report which found significant gaps in information collection and timely information sharing between this Committee on Foreign Investment and other government agencies, including the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. concerning foreign investment in U.S. agricultural land. Recent national security risks related to foreign investment in U.S. agricultural land have highlighted the importance of CFIUS's reviews. CFIUS is the main authority to address the national security ramification of foreign investment in the United States, according to the Treasury and Department of Defense officials. However, we found that that group does not currently have regular and timely access to detailed Agricultural Foreign Investment Disclosure Act information, the nation's most comprehensive data on foreign investments in U.S. agricultural land, according to USDA officials. And last year, for instance, there was a massive project by a Chinese food manufacturer out in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And they had a proposed corn mill on 300 acres of farmland it purchased, which is just 12 miles from the U.S. Air Force base out there. And everyone was all excited about it because it was a big investment initially. And then some smart people figured out, well, what the heck are the Chinese doing purchasing all this land and putting in this major operation right next to this sensitive base? And essentially it was shut down. So something good happened. Our national security took precedence over investment from our adversaries, competitors, whatever you want to call it, from the Chinese. Chinese and other foreign purchases of U.S. farmland could pose a significant threat to U.S. national security. That the Biden administration is hiding records about this concerning issue is not reassuring. So, there's good and bad news here. The good news is the Biden administration is increasing its oversight and monitoring over foreign land purchases here in the United States based on national security grounds. The bad news is they're being secretive about what they've done thus far and what they know thus far. And that's where Judicial Watch comes in, and we're doing the heavy lifting to uncover the truth about this core threat to our national security, not only in terms of giving our bad guys an opportunity to spy on sensitive operations here in the United States, but increasing foreign control of our food supply here in America. That's concerning as well. Don't you agree? So once again, Judicial Watch with the heavy lifting. We do it with your support on elections, foreign policy, January 6th, Biden corruption, the Biden crisis. We never stop protecting the rule of law, protecting the Supreme Court, holding AOC accountable, and pushing back against the left-wing board here in Washington, D.C. We do it with your support. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.